Hi guys. There's an entire set of shaming tactics and language, and I suppose a set of concepts that are used by women, almost exclusively by women, when they speak about men, specifically with reference to relationships. This gyno speak, as I will henceforth refer to most things uttered by women and feminists, revolves around the concept of commitment. Now, uh, you've heard it basically everywhere. How often does one hear from the lips of a woman, he doesn't want to commit? He's a commitment phobe. Now, I'll get to that a little later, but the whole concept of the commitment phobe is fallacious, and it is a female exclusive form of shaming language. But before we get there, let's try to examine what exactly women mean in gyno speak when they talk about commitment, because we hear this all the time. And first off, when a woman says he doesn't want to commit, that is not a statement. It's not a neutral statement. It's not even really a negative statement. It's in fact a reproach. It's a reproach directed towards the man, and it carries with it the idea that he is essentially doing something wrong. What exactly does it mean to commit, and what is commitment within the context of a relationship or marriage? God forbid. Well, I think it's pretty clear that it requires translation and interpretation because it's not really it's not really what it seems to be. By commitment, I believe at least, in gyno speak, women are referring to uh, a term or concept whereby the man essentially shackles himself to the woman and does her bidding. Now, commitment is much less commitment. If I were to euphemistic, I think commitment is essentially a euphemistic term for servility, and maybe I would go so far as to say slavery, a kind of domestic slavery. And the reason why I say that is because it's clear that when a woman speaks of commitment, she desires the man to subordinate himself, his desires, and to submit to her wishes and desires, and to submit himself to her, whereby she is the priority in every respect. That is really what commitment boils down to. And it should come as no surprise to anyone that when women speak of commitment and commitment folks, which I'll get to in a sec, it really is exclusively in those terms that the idea that the man is there to serve her interests, and those men who do not wish to do so are commitment phobes. Remember that in virtually every relationship, in modern times at least, the man is in a servile position because he worships pussy and because he is a slave to the woman's wishes. If he chooses to reject those wishes, i.e., break the so-called contract of commitment, he'll run into problems. And that's not good, right? Because then you have stress, you have a fight, and of course you will not get the coveted pussy, right? Remember the issue I've talked about before about women using sex to manipulate men. But let's talk about the term commitment phobe. Now, it's very obvious that this is a shaming term, much of a similar bent as, I don't know, calling a man a pussy or a loser or what have you because he can't get laid. Only this one's only used by women. Why in gyno speech do they use this term? Well, the idea of the commitment phobe. Well, first off, he has a phobia, so he's afraid. So there's the fear. It's a negative term. He's fearful, and he doesn't want to commit. He doesn't want to join in this wonderful bonding and what have you. And well, of course, the commitment phobe. It's claimed by the vaginally endowed that the reason why they don't want to commit usually is so they can have sex with multiple partners. And I suspect in very few cases this is actually the case. But all the so-called commitment phobes, including myself, friends of mine, whether they're men going their own way or not, at least in an active manner, they don't want to commit for a very different reason, for several different reasons. But I think the actual interpretation of the term commitment phobe is probably closer to liberty lover or a freedom lover, someone who prizes his own freedom and his autonomy over that of subordination and self-abasement and self-imposed slavery towards the will of another, towards the will of the vaginally endowed. The term is a shaming term and it's negative because that's how women, well, and mangines and others, but essentially women score points and make men feel bad because men, in some cases, refuse to do their bidding and execute their will. And so the commitment phobe, of course, is one such man. He is someone who's chosen to go his own way, in the vast majority of cases, not so he can have sex with multiple partners, but simply because he values his freedom, his autonomy, and he doesn't want to subordinate himself to someone who has respect for none of those things, and also expects him to, well, essentially live in semi-eternal servitude with regards to the woman's will and her wishes. Well, that's so you create the idea of commitment phobia. He doesn't want to commit. Of course, there's the other element to that, and that's the expectation. The man is expected to commit. That is his obligation, his duty. Let's turn the tables here for a little bit, and let's consider the concept of a female commitment phobe. But we don't use that term for females, do we? No, when a woman doesn't want to be in a relationship or wants to go on her own, go it on her own, or tackle the world on her own, she is a strong, independent woman, someone to be admired. When a man does that, he's a loner, a loser, and a commitment phobe. So we see, of course, as usual, the double standard. And so it is the expectation put upon men to engage in so-called commitment, and self-abasement, and slavery towards the woman. So ultimately, commitment is nothing else than slavery. It is a form of subordination, and total subordination. Remember, because the man's wishes in a relationship really don't count, and they will always be superseded by the woman's wishes. To the extent that the man can fulfill the woman's wishes, she might throw him a bone or what have you, just like a dog, essentially. That's how he's treated. And if not, she will punish him through various means. So, no, commitment phobia is really just a term for men who prize their freedom and their autonomy. And I would like to have respect for themselves. And once again, we see this expectation. The man must do this. He's expected to do this. He's expected to commit. This is what he wants, blah, 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 blah. And, you hear this all the time. And the man who seeks freedom is viewed as in a negative light. And I'll cite an example. Now, once again, a while back, I was talking to an internet acquaintance of mine, the same one that I've mentioned in previous videos, mind you. And sometimes we do have had fairly lively debates about the whole men's rights issue, or men versus women society. And she's willing to concede that some injustice happens to men, but she just can't see the point. I mean, I've kind of given up with her anyway. But most importantly, she cited an example once of a man who didn't want to commit. He talked about some guy at her workplace who said, he told me he just not in specific reference to her, but in general, that he doesn't really want to be in a relationship because he just wants to enjoy his freedom. He wants to be alone. And this was told in disparaging terms, and of course in a negative context. He just wants to be alone, and he doesn't want to commit. He wants his freedom. In fact, she used the term freedom. And freedom, of course, is a negative thing, at least with regards to women. That the man who wishes to maintain his freedom is seen as, well, something negative. And of course, the reason why that is the case is fairly obvious and should be to everyone, is that those who seek their freedom in the face of tyranny. And let us be honest that the rule, especially the romantic relationship rule of women, they do rule things. Unfortunately, so many men are still slaves to their base pussy chasing instincts. Um, it freedom brings them away from that tyranny, and so they want to shackle. Of course, they want to shackle the man, and the man who desires freedom won't let that happen. So, of course, we see a conflict. And this is why the shaming language is used. Oh, he's a commitment phobe. There's something wrong with him. Um, when are you going to settle down? You hear this, there are other variants of it as well. But I think we who are aware of these issues can be quite content in the fact that it's actually a compliment. Because the so-called commitment phobe, the freedom lover, is someone who has more respect for himself than the vast majority of men who decide to commit, to enslave themselves voluntarily. Sometimes unbeknownst to themselves, I suppose, but I don't know how much sympathy I have with them anymore. And to really just go strike it out on his own, and you know, this is a good thing because men, contrary to popular belief, and contrary to what women claim in their gyno speak, men are human beings as well, and we have a right to assert our rights, um, particularly in the face of the unjust, irrational, and absurd desires of women who wish to enslave us and shackle us to their will, and in more extreme cases, ruin us. So, which usually is a result of the man resisting her commands. Well, that's another issue. Anyway, I did want to talk about this because I think it's fairly important. This whole idea of the so-called commitment, and then the shame language of tagging someone a commitment phobe. Oh, he's a commitment phobe. He doesn't want to commit. It's a horrible thing. It's not a horrible thing. It's a good thing. Because men who are aware of this and choose not to commit see in the cost-benefit analysis at the end of the day, never mind them prizing their own freedom, that committing is essentially a suicide mission. And marriage, of course, is the greatest form of suicide mission. To knowingly, I mean, if you are suicidal, by all means, right? But to knowingly plunge yourself into a situation where you're not going to get out and you're going to be destroyed in the process, that's something any freedom-loving man will not do. So I guess I'd just say then, fuck the women who use this shaming language. Fuck the manginas who concede to it and acquiesce to it. And yeah, then we should all continue being commitment phobes, because to my mind it's a noble thing. The desire to maintain your autonomy, keep up your freedom, and to resist what essentially is tyranny at the end of the day. It is the tyranny of the many, and I do mean many, many, many. And thanks for listening.